basketball was my life. Like from high school through college, I was for real gonna be an NBA player for sure. Like I felt like I was pretty good playing street ball.
I love that story. You wanted to get in the NBA, took a different route. Well, welcome everybody. This is another episode of Beer Invested. I have the honor of having a special guest, Mr. Beau Beery here.
Let's go. Let me just first start off and say this studio is dope. If y'all get invited to do this and you're like, oh man, I don't want to come all the way to Orlando. Like I'm all the way over here. Like you just need to make a trip or double down and see someone else while you're here, whatever it is, because this thing is nice. Best one I've been on. So kudos to y'all.
Appreciate that, man. You put a lot of time and effort in it. We got to thank Troy behind the scenes.
Yes. Yes. By the way, Troy is like truly a bodyguard. The guy's like 6'5". He's like 220.
Oh my goodness.
His shirt's popping, got a tattoo. So you'll get to meet Troy as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Again, a pleasure having you here, man. We're really excited about today's episode. We really want to give the viewers a chance to have insight into who you are and the man, the myth, the legend. We've heard so many great things about you. People probably have heard so many great things about you.
Yeah.
So why don't you start off by just telling us who you are? What's your story, bro?
Sure. So I'm a multifamily broker. I cover the northern half of Florida. I do anything over 10 units, conventional and student housing. I grew up in a real small town, Wielaka. Today is only 300 people.
300.
Yeah. Fishing town. So I grew up, I can remember being as early as 10 years old, taking out a 150 horsepower Mercury bass boat by myself out on the St. Johns River. And that was back in the day when the parents were just kind of like, be home for dinner, right? And so we'd go out fishing all the time, and that was awesome. And then my mom, she was a teacher. She started teaching at Pearson Taylor High School, which was in Pearson. So we moved to DeLand. So my graduating class in high school was only 69 people. So again, another small town. Pearson's super small. DeLand, where I lived, was super small. And I had some friends who were a couple years ahead of me, and they were going to the University of Florida. And I didn't have any, I was definitely going to go to college, but I didn't have any like choices in college. I wasn't like really thinking about it. I would just go visit them, and basketball was my life. Like from high school through college, I was for real going to be an NBA player for sure. Like I felt like I was pretty good playing street ball, right? So but I never played any P time actually in high school, right? Like I would sit the bench all the time. But I tell you this story because we would go to Gainesville all the time to visit my friends who were a couple of years ahead of me. They were in college. I was still in high school as a senior. And you could play basketball anywhere on UF campus, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. There was a game going on. That was my choice to go to school at UF just because of that, right? Got a degree in marketing, got a master's degree in real estate, started doing brokerage and management for a commercial portfolio, and then went exclusive into multifamily.
Oh my goodness. I just love that story. He wanted to get in the NBA, took a different route, started selling multifamily deals. You don't hear that too often.
Yeah.
I really love that. I can tell.
Orlando Magic was the team, man. I mean, Shaquille O'Neal, Penny Hardaway, that was like I was sold.
I love that. I can tell Gainesville, especially UF, has a special place in your heart just for that reason.
Yes.
That is really cool. Awesome. So went to UF, got a marketing degree, and then decided to start selling multifamily buildings.
Yeah.
Early on, what was that process like for you? Was it smooth selling? Was it just an easy transition? Talk about the economy when you first entered and kind of where it's at now.
So my first 10 years of my career, I worked for a developer and brokered and managed office, retail, industrial. We had some multifamily as well. And so I did a lot of leasing transactions, sale transactions. And a buddy of mine who owned the Coldwell Banker and the Coldwell Banker commercial started talking to my ear. We're fishing together, we're going hunting a couple times. And he's like, dude, you've done so incredible for one guy. What if you started brokering for 5 guys? What if you started brokering deals for 10 guys, 20 guys? And it's crazy because I'd done it for 10 years for one group. and never thought about like doing this for a number of people, right? And so it started, it was always in my head, man. And he just kept calling me and we'd go fishing all of a sudden. So we struck a deal where I could acquire the Coldwell Banker and the Coldwell Banker commercial. And this was in 2010. Okay. So still pits of hell. I mean, the brokerage was teetering on not being able to make it. All brokerages were hurting bad still from at that time. They were still recovering. But I saw an opportunity where I could buy into a brokerage that I otherwise couldn't have afforded, right? And be able to take something from the ground floor. And so I started doing general brokerage, including multifamily, for 10 guys, 20 guys, 30 guys. The very first year, I was the number one broker in the entire region, residential, commercial, whatever it was. I did $26 million year one, right? It was nuts. So I'm like, yo, I made the right move. This is crazy, right? It was just crazy. Before that, I had made $250,000 a year, right? Yeah. And so we were just, which don't get me wrong, was great, but I was killing it. But it was only 2-3 years that went by, I started noticing like an outside broker who came from South Florida, came to Gainesville and started gobbling up market share. And he wasn't even a national. And so I was like, dude, I was like, if some guy could do that so easily, what if CB Richard Ellis comes to Gainesville? What if Colliers comes to Gainesville? Whatever it is. So specialization was what I started thinking about. And meanwhile, I'm working 80, 90, 100 hours a week. I'm doing $500 commissions to $100,000 commissions. It didn't make any sense. And specialization kept coming back at me. So when I started with the developers, 2002, the market was okay. And then when I made the leap into all multifamily, it was like 2014-ish, somewhere in there. And best decision ever made. So just total concentration.
I love that. That is so cool. And I think one thing that's unique about you, where you're at today, is I don't know of any brokers who basically do everything themselves. Like they're the only broker at their company. Yeah. And you have, I think successful is an understatement. You have legit killed it.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Been the top guy. And so I actually want to ask you if you could share some advice, to some of the viewers. How did you build that brand, that reputation? What was the work like you had to put in? What was your mindset?
Yeah.
How did you climb that mountaintop to get to where you're at?
Great question, man. I always tell people that I am a marketing person who learned real estate, not a real estate person who later maybe learned to market themselves. And there's a big distinction there. There's plenty of guys who I compete against and who I broker for that are far smarter than me in real estate. They can do better calculations, get better debt, and see the future better on what things could be worth in the future. But I was always good at sort of marketing, and not just marketing myself, but understanding what the customer wants, right? There's a good book I think it's called The Brand Story or something like that. It talks about how you want to speak to the customer the way they want to be spoken to. So even when I worked for the developer, I began building my brand. I felt like people would buy and lease more inventory when they trusted you, and there wasn't a whole lot of other great competition in the market. There was a few other guys who were really good. And so I started tracking every sale I did, and I would do write-ups on it. And I created social media stuff when a whole lot of people had a social media stuff, and started doing videos way before videos were done. And it was all really just I wanted to have a warm conversation with someone rather than a cold call. I never liked cold calls. I was never able to call up someone and say, hey, my name is Beau Beery. The market's amazing. You should sell. You should list with me, right? Yeah. My whole idea from when I started with my first job was if I built enough of a name for myself, doing the right things, but not saying, I'm Beau Beery, I'm the best, I sell a crap load, blah, blah, blah. It's more about just kind of putting out awesome content and information about the markets. In return, everybody would know me. I had signs everywhere, and I had video covered in social media, and I got testimonials from people that people knew and put out there. It was just anywhere you turned, if you heard about me, when I go to make a phone call to someone who owns a $20 million asset, my whole goal was, before I say my name is Beau Beery, I'm in the, blank, blank, blank market, They're like, oh yeah, I've already heard about you. Yeah, I've been following you guys I've been following you for years. I've been seeing your stuff. I've been getting your mailings for 15 years. I've been getting your emails for 10 years. And, and you sold for so-and-so who's my cousin. And like, that was my whole thing. And that's my whole spiel today, is just add so much value in someone's personal and business lives that when it's time for them to sell, they think of you. Big deal, right? So like, I've never been, I'm going off on a little bit tangent, but let me just continue on it. I've never been able to convince someone to sell an apartment complex. I've never gotten on the phone with someone who wasn't a seller, right? And then convince them why they should sell their $10 million asset. I've never been able to do it, right? All we can do is just add enough value in their lives without any, want for something in return, so that when it's time in their cycle, refinance, they've added enough value, partner died, divorce, whatever it is, they think of you.
That is so good. You made me think about a few different things right there, but one thing that I can really attest to about yourself is your level of being able to educate sellers. Like, if you go to Beau's site right now, he's going to have all the statistics for Gainesville on his site. Like, he's very prominent about posting the recent sales history. I'll see you post on LinkedIn all the time about, these are the amount of deals that I've sold in the last 6 months in this area. Like, your market, and you educate sellers on that, and I think that creates that trust and that brand awareness for yourself. That's a very good point. One thing that you talk about too, that we kind of talk about often on this podcast and with brokers, is adding value, and that's a common term that you hear in the real estate industry, and I think it looks different depending on who you ask. But you said something that I actually haven't heard a broker say to me, or a guest say to me, is that you want to add value personally and professionally.
Yeah.
And so if you could give an insight on what that looks like for you and your experience, and how's that worked out for you?
Yeah. So in my conversations, I try to provide all kinds of market data, like insane depth market data, right? There's the typical brokerage that produces a 65-page market report that they give to their brokers, and their brokers mass email it that nobody reads. I create 10-second bits of something in the market or a particular complex or whatever it is that is fruitful, right? So that's my lead into a conversation. And in conversations I have over time, months and years, I find out little bits of personal things about people, right? Who their daughters or sons are, where they go to school, what their hobbies are, what they do on the weekends, the boat they just bought, the fishing trip they just went on, whatever it is. I'm constantly taking notes about these conversations, right? Like, they don't know it, but I have my earpiece, I have my little headpiece on, and the whole time they're talking, I'm just typing all kinds of stuff. I've got notes about people that if they knew the kind of notes I had about them, they'd be freaked out. I don't do it to be freaked them out, but it's because I want to add value to them.
Right.
Like, I want to be to think about me. Selfishly, my whole goal is if they could go to dinner after the first phone call with me. Like, I just made this introductory phone call. The guy just bought a apartment complex in my market for the first time. He may own 5,000 units in California, just bought something in Tallahassee, right? Hey, my name is Beau Beery. So you just bought so-and-so. We'd love to talk about buying more, right? And so we get to talking, and I learn more personal stuff. I want to wow him so much in that call, not just about business, but about personal and commonalities, that when he or she goes to dinner that evening with their spouse, they're like, honey, this dude, Beau Beery, called me today about one of our complexes. You wouldn't believe the kind of intel this guy has in the market. And by the way, he also went to this, car thing, and he also does this, and he knew about this. And can you believe that? Right? Like, I want that kind of experience every single time.
Absolutely, man. Like, for those of you listening, I hope you had your headset on. I hope you were taking notes, because you just gave a whole masterclass on how to sell yourself, or how to build a brand, how to sell to potential clients, and how to sell your services. That was amazing. That was actually really
so the personal, to finish, the personal stuff that I'm accumulating from these conversations, all of my customers are ranked A, B, and C, which dictates the type of follow-up I'm going to do with them, right? Like, a rank A customer is someone I'm calling or touching base with every 60 days. Rank Bs and Cs are different, right? But when that call comes up 60 days from now, I'm thinking to myself, okay, how am I going to add value in their business? And then how can I maybe add value in their personal life, right? If someone's a car guy, it's going to be easy for me. I might text him something like a car show coming up or whatever. Or if he's going on a trip to Europe or whatever, I might go and find something resourceful that could be useful, right? Just so it's, but you can't remember all that stuff if you aren't, using a CRM and being mindful to actually inquire about someone beyond trying to get a freaking listing, which is what everybody else does.
Right. Man, that is so good. It reminds me of the book Mr. Smooth. Have you read that one?
What?
Oh my God.
I told you about Mr. Schmooze, man. What? Mr. Schmooze, y'all got to get Mr. Schmooze.
Y'all have to get that. If you haven't read
So good.
I feel like I'm looking at Mr. Smooth right now. Like, he just smoozed me.
That is a great book.
My building to sell. I don't even have one. Yeah, that was so good. That was really good. I really hope people took heed to that, because that is so important, what you just said. Like, being able to relate not just on a professional level, but personally.
Everything is a people business.
We're human at the end of the day. And we want to do people. I think I heard this quote on Instagram or somewhere the other day, is people do business with people they like.
Boom.
Like,
I was literally just about to say, that's what it is.
If somebody likes you, they're going to want to use you for their services. And again, the service you provide, it's not a small thing. Like, these are hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars worth of assets that people want to, liquidate and sell to feed their families and to the next business venture. So I think that is spot on. Yeah, and the real estate component of that, any broker can help them do. Honestly, it's not hard to sell an apartment complex. Yeah. Everybody wants them, right? And it's not hard to get the highest price. Most reasonably competent brokers can. People want to do business with people they like. It's why I have, in many times in my career, lost listings to folks who have never even sold an apartment complex. I can remember 2 years ago, I lost a deal to a residential agent who only sells condos, not even houses, just condos, never sold an apartment complex in their lives, but they're neighbors, right? Or their church members, or their cousin has so-and-so, right? So people, that's a huge component of that. That's why I spend so much time building relationship. Plus, this business eats up so much of our lives. Yeah. If we didn't have relationships within the business and it was just our family, it's a lot more depressing. Like, if it's just all business, right? I want to have friends that I work with on a regular basis. It's part of the reason I'm here as well, right? Like, if I didn't know you guys, I wouldn't make all this stuff. I'm sure as hell glad I did, though. Yeah, like I said, we appreciate you coming too.
Yeah.
I kind of want to shift a little bit and kind of dive a little bit more about some of the things that you've experienced in your career. I really think storytelling is just a way for people to learn. And so I got to ask you this question. What was a defining moment for you in your career that you can think of, whether it was something big or small, whether it did one bad, or what's a defining moment for you?
Oh man, a couple of them. I would say, first of all, understanding the scale of, when I made the leap of going from, working with one individual, right, and building that portfolio to helping lots. That was sort of the impetus of making the jump from being a salaried plus commissioned person to an all commissioned person, right? But I would think, I would say the two other biggest leaps of my career, three biggest leaps, okay? Number one, coaching.
Write this down.
Can I get one of these now? Amen now. Coaching was huge, bro. Like, it wasn't a few years into my business that I was just pulling my hair out, right? I was, making good money, doing lots of transactions, but had no life, right? And I've told this story a few times, but coaching sort of honed me into a concentration on multifamily, helped me hire the right folks, get back down to under 50 hours a week, giving you life, being more efficient, noticing margin, right? Which is kind of like the personal part of your life and the hobbies and so forth. I would say the next defining moment was hiring Tracy Ross on my team. Tracy Ross is like the heart, right, of the body. I mean, she does everything that I shouldn't be, right, that I shouldn't be doing, so that I can only do the most important things. Yeah, for real. I mean, I took you to the next level. And then the third component of career-wise was a CRM. So many people underestimate the power of a customer relationship management software. And the folks who have them, most of them don't use them to their capacities, right? But there's unbelievable amount of things you can handle at one time when you have a system that's tracking your history and scheduling your next event and holding in notes and all kinds of stuff, right? So those were big trajectories for me.
I love that. Three big things that I think most people who listen to this can take away as far as when they're adding to their business or even just trying to invest in real estate, join a syndication or just start whatever they're trying to do. I think those three things are very practical.
Yeah.
And tangible. You probably can't find a Tracy everywhere, so don't go call it for Tracy. But hiring the right people is important.
Yeah.
And I think that's key for any business. Along with defining moments or things that you've done in your career. What was your favorite deal that you were able to be a part of?
That's easy. That's an easy one. So in Gainesville and the Gainesville market, so I cover the northern half of Florida, but I'm based in Gainesville. And in the Gainesville market, which I've been in since the late 90s, is the Butler family. The Butler family built Butler Plaza and Butler North. So it's roughly like 2 million square feet of retail. And they had this one apartment complex that they built in 1965. And they've owned it ever since. And in the last several years, they had vacated the whole building. The father who built it had passed away. The daughter had been running the business, Deborah, who's a phenomenal businesswoman. And I had been after, so you can think it's a 12-story vacant apartment building in a phenomenal location on the water in Gainesville, tallest apartment building in Gainesville. And it had just been sitting there for a couple of years and it was vacant. And 3-4 years before it went vacant, I had been calling wanting to sell that asset, right? Because it's not their business. Their business is retail. They didn't pay attention a whole lot, pay attention to multifamily. And, I knew the rents weren't where they were supposed to be. And I knew every broker on the planet was calling for this listing. Literally weekly trying to call. And I had developed a good relationship with Deborah over a long, long period of time, even working for the gentleman I worked for because they were on bank boards together. And I when I wrote the book, The Multifamily Investors Who Dominate, sent that to her. And soon after, I still don't know if that was the reason she had finally called me, because we had a couple of meetings about selling. It just wasn't time. She finally called me, and I think it was 2020. And so that was my favorite transaction, a couple of reasons. Number one, that a family who had built something, call it 55 years ago, and the man who built it has since passed away. She's taken over the business. There's a lot of emotional component to that. That property was like, it was sort of one of the last physical representations of her father. It was a very important asset to not just her, but the whole company. Yeah. And she chose me, right? And then the second part I loved about it was we developed this amazing marketing video for the asset itself, in which we incorporated her as well into the video, and she loved that. And then thirdly, I think we got 13 or 14 offers in like a week or so. The buyer bought it sight unseen, never set foot on it, hardly ever heard from him at all. It was so spooky, I had to call ahead of time to other brokers who had done business with them to confirm, yeah, this dude's for real. And so they're still working on plans to redevelop the whole thing, build new additional units, but it was awesome.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining, wow, 12-story,
yeah,
vacant, and your book, was what kind of set you apart. Why don't you kind of dive deep into the book? Like, I know you wrote a best-selling book.
Yep.
It's a book that I read a few times, and I'm sure a bunch of our staff members have read. I think we gifted it to everybody.
Yeah.
It was that good, legit.
Awesome.
It was amazing.
My man.
Why don't you talk a little bit about the book and kind of tell us why you wrote it, what was the inspiration behind it?
Sure. My coach had been pushing me to write a book for at least a couple of years, and we just get busy in our lives, right? And we can't even think about writing a book, especially if we'd never written a book before. So finally got in my head to write this book, and I just thought to myself, like, if I could help one or two groups buy a couple more deals, it would be worth it. And hell, if I got one extra listing in the next 20 years because someone read my book and said, that dude knows what he's talking about, it would be worth it, right? And so the book is called Multifamily Investors Who Dominate. If you've ever seen the Jerry Maguire movie, right, that movie was based on a manuscript he wrote about how he believes the business is going in the wrong direction and how it should be and what it should look like and what your agent should look like and how you can do more business and blah, blah, blah. And that was kind of my impetus. Was I saw so many people do it wrong to grow their business and not last very long. I saw so many people who did okay at it. They bought a deal every couple of years, right? And that might be okay for a lot of folks. But then there was a very, very small number of investors, what I call elite investors in the book, who represent 0.5% of all investors. Are literally calculated in my portfolio, who buy so many more deals per year over a long career. And I wanted to start documenting everything they did, right? Like from soup to nuts, what they did differently from everybody else, right? And so it only took me like 75, 90 days to write it. It took much longer to actually get to Amazon, and we recorded an Audible and Kindle, but it was super well received because it circles around two things. Number one is that brokers are the ones you want to develop these relationships with. Over 90% of all the deals over 10 units are done by brokers. And number two, reputation is everything in this business, right? So in my market, the northern half of Florida is arguably probably one of the top 3 states in the entire United States for multifamily. I cover the northern half, and you think about all the apartment complexes that are there. The reality is there's only 2,045 apartment complexes over 10 units, and they're owned by only 985 people. That's it. 985. And of those 985, the people who I've dubbed as rank A is only about 120, 130 people in the world. And people could be REITs, nationals, syndicators, small mom and pops, whatever it is. 123. My whole business evolves around those 123. And a lot of those 123 are elite, but very, very, very few of them.
Wow. Like, I don't even know too many brokers who can just spit off the facts like that.
You got to know them.
I thought that was amazing.
Right?
That is so cool. Speaking of your book, like, the thing I just keep thinking about as you were talking in regards to, one, how you built your business, two, how you said your coach, helped you or encouraged you to write the book and you found the time, and three, when you talked about the niche of your business being focused around, those 120, 30 people, is I find that the people who are the best at what they do are really aware. And the thing that I keep hearing from you is how aware
self-awareness
you are of yourself, those that you do business with, those who are your competitors. Like, you were able to list off, what if so-and-so comes into Gainesville and starts doing this? Oh, I got to specialize. Like, the awareness to be able to say, hey, I need to pivot here, right? Like, content changing, let me focus on this. All right, I know I'm really good at producing, but let me hone in, let me get a coach. You know what I mean? I know I got a lot of good things. Let me actually hire out this so I can be able to focus on this. The awareness for me is what sticks out, that I keep hearing that you were able to, be able to be proactive in implementing that into your career, in your business. And so I just want to say, one, kudos to you, but I just want to kind of go deeper into that. Like, how important do you feel awareness is? How has that evolved for you?
Yeah.
And kind of what you've been able to build as far as your brand and your company, and kind of what does that look like as far as, as you grow? Like, this is not the end for Beau. Yeah. Be here selling buildings 30, 40 years from now.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So what does that look like for you? How does that evolve?
Let me just start granular. I think social IQ, social awareness, whatever it is a huge skill, man, and it's so lacking in so many human beings, and the younger folks are today, I feel like the less self-aware they are for whatever reason. I mean, obviously you're obviously, well, yeah, it is. I mean, truly. I mean, I've spoken to lots of folks, right? And it's hard to have even eye-to-eye conversations and all those things a lot of folks complain about. But the self-awareness part, to be able to, even just at a granular level on the telephone, being on, like, when you're making phone calls, to be able to be enough aware that this person isn't digging the phone call, they're in a rush, or something's going on, or that this person does want to talk more, right? And so you're going to let them talk and stop interjecting on how much you want to show them how smart you are, right? To being in a transaction and being aware of how far this seller can be pushed and how far this buyer can't be pushed. And so there's just all kinds of, and I don't know how you improve the skill. I don't know if maybe it's reading books, maybe it's listening to enough seminars, talking to enough people. I don't know how you build the skill. I just know having that skill has been super beneficial for me. I'm always hyper aware of how that person is feeling across from me or on the phone or the situation, because I'm always trying to put myself in their position. Empathy is enormous. I talk about it in my book, right? Empathy is when transactions go awry, whether it be a real estate transaction or something in your personal life, is stopping yourself from doing that immediate ignorant reaction. Social media is the worst at it, right?
Absolutely.
And instead putting yourself in the other person's position and trying to understand, okay, well, why are they feeling that way? Why are they thinking that way? Okay. When a buyer redlines a purchase contract in 3,800 different ways, right? Instead of just being like, oh, that's ridiculous. As a seller, I've used that contract 300 times for the last 30 years, and I've never had more than 3 red lines. I'm not doing this deal, right? Like, let's just chill. Let's sit back a little bit. Let's go. Let me go over these things with him. Let me find out what his concerns are, right? And if you can approach it in that way, in that kind of self-awareness, you can go so much further, right? I hire for self-awareness. I just brought on a young guy, Joe Clank. Anytime I hire someone, they go through a personality test, right? It's called the AVA model. And I have someone sort of, they answer a whole bunch of questions and it spits back how I can work with that person, what their strengths and weaknesses are, how we can work together, so we can make sure we're not putting them in the wrong role, right? Because I want them to have enough self-awareness to be able to grow in the business, if you will. So to answer your question, long-term for me, I'm not trying to be a big brokerage. I wasn't ever going to hire anybody, but I saw a need for under 10 units and hired Joe, and he's killing it, right? I just want to continue to deliver phenomenal customer service, be different, add value, and I don't really plan to retire. I don't see myself just like sailing off into the sun. I enjoy doing this.
Come back for part 2 on August 25th. We're Invested podcast is produced by Atrium Management Company. Thanks for tuning in. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe.